Hello and welcome to the Sagittarius full moon live stream Q&A and forecast. I'm your astrologer, Cawnawyn Mor, and today I'm joined by my lovely Blue Hour subscribers in my Zoom waiting room. And today we're going to be doing some readings with those subscribers in a private setting. But first, of course, I'm here to give the forecast to everyone over on YouTube. So we're going to dive into the Sagittarius full moon happening at 9 degrees of Sagittarius on May 31st. This is a very special blue moon. We don't get these very often, of course. And so being in Sagittarius, there's a lot of joy and luck and abundance with this. And I think it's really special that we have this full moon. So let's go ahead and dive into the chart. So I always use an Aries rising with our chart, so we're not working with house structure today. If you take this time of 1:45 a.m. and put it into your unique time zone, you should get a chart that looks similar to this, but your houses will look different. And then, of course, you can put the same chart around your natal chart and get a good idea of where this full moon is happening inside of your chart. So here we are. We have the sun at 9 degrees of Gemini, opposing our moon at 9 degrees of Sagittarius. So I always start with emphasizing that the full moon is an opposition between our two luminaries, the sun and the moon. And these are incredibly personal places in our chart. And so what does this create? An opposition is going to be that approach from outside of ourselves. So we're being approached with or exposed to this axis acting as a polarity in our world, and we're meant to grapple and understand and integrate this wisdom of this axis within our lives. And this axis of Gemini and Sagittarius together, the moon illuminating the energy of Sagittarius to help balance out the sun's energy in Gemini this season, giving us a well-rounded idea of how to balance the two energies and what we maybe need to keep in mind, because Gemini has blind spots and Sagittarius can help fill those in. So the moon being in Sagittarius, illuminating the sign ruled by Jupiter, and Sagittarius is that of the explorer and the philosopher and the big picture ideas, the long distance, big dreams and visions. And Sagittarius is about expansion of the mind and of the soul and of the experience of life. Gemini, meanwhile, is a sign that is very much focused on all of the minor details. It can take a massive amount of data and understand it logically and comprehend and compute it into finding meaning. And Gemini is so important, obviously, this season because we have the sun traveling through. But as you can see close by, we just had our first in many, many years conjunction with with Uranus and the sun in Gemini. So Uranus is in Gemini to stay for the next 7 years, teaching us and awakening us to the wisdom of Gemini. And Gemini is about seeing all of that data I talked about and finding how it all makes sense, how it all connects together. I always think of Gemini with the guy with the red tape, and he's making all the connections. And Gemini says, okay, I see these two polarities, and where is the wisdom between them? So even within the sun signs expression in this full moon, we are examining polarity, which side, and having two opposing sides of something. And is there truth in that, or is there a single unity? Is there wisdom we can come to? So Gemini is already concerned with finding those two sides and seeing all the different facets of the diamond. And Sagittarius would like to kind of step back and just appreciate the diamond for what it is and not worry too much about every little piece. And so Sagittarius moon is coming in here to remind us to look more big picture, to think more long term or overarching idea. Like, what is the true essence? What is the truth of what's happening? Because Gemini can get really, really caught up in the data. And I really think of this axis as an axis of knowledge, as a place of, again, expanding the mind and then comprehension, and then also coherence, being able to speak and share and teach the truth. And this axis has a big major role to play in how we are educated, how we take in information, how we are mobile, not only through our neighborhoods and our communities, but also throughout the world. And again, how we are going out and expanding ourselves through knowledge. So, I wonder for you, wherever you have this axis present in your chart, this says a lot about how you take in information and new belief systems, how you expose yourself to other things, other frames of reference, or other opposing viewpoints, other people, and just making those connections. And Sagittarius has an element of teaching and guiding as part of it as well, being a leader in that way, being a spokesperson or even a preacher, right? Standing on a bit of a pedestal to share, but then also getting into, like, fully invested into a whole new culture, a whole new mindset, a whole new belief, and really understanding truth from a perspective that is outside of itself. And so I love this axis because I feel like there's so much creativity and play and curiosity that fuels it, and a hunger to learn. And so I wonder for you, wherever you have this axis in your own chart, whether it be in your more maybe extroverted houses where you're somebody who likes to go out and connect with others and learn new things and put yourself in situations where you're a beginner again. Gemini is the quintessential beginner's mind, if that's been lit up for you recently and maybe there's something you're wanting to explore. Now, I want to take a look at who is the moon and the sun talking to in this chart. And our most distinct aspect we have is here's the moon in a trine with fellow fire sign Aries. We have Saturn in Aries at 12 degrees here. So just 3 degrees away from being a perfect trine, and the moon will move into that trine later that day. So it's definitely picking up on this Saturn in Aries energy. So what does that bring into this equation? Saturn in Aries is here to teach us about time, about patience, about restlessness, about commitment. What does long-term commitment look like toward that goal and that dream that we're hungry for? And so while Sagittarius is also very much distant thinking, thinking large picture, Saturn in Aries is here to really challenge us when we want something yesterday. Are we willing to put the amount of work in necessary? But also on the flip side, because the planets exist in all forms of expression, what obstacles are we putting in our way to keep us from getting to those goals? And Saturn, I think, being in a supportive aspect to this moon, is really asking us to consider the long-term commitment it's going to take to thinking in that big dream. I also look at Saturn as potentially being a mentor or an authority figure or a guide in your life. So maybe you've been supported by someone recently who's offered a piece of advice or some guidance. Maybe you're turning to somebody for some insight on how to think more long term, how to shape that vision, how to gather enough data or have an objective viewpoint to get to the truth of something. And then Saturn can come in and being that authority piece of, trusting a somebody who has an authority on the subject, or going to a resource that's a tried, trusted, tested, and true resource that for something that you're wanting to learn. But Saturn is also going to challenge us in that he's asking us to put up the boundaries, put up the constraints and the structure necessary to build something that lasts, that is enduring. And that helps Sagittarius because Sagittarius is thinking really, really long term. And then it's also the Aries is helping the Gemini because Aries wants to move and to go, and Gemini, ruled by Mercury, moves fast, incredibly fast. So there's an excitement here, there's a fire and a drive, and Saturn is really asking us, like, okay, whatever that thing inside of us that's fueling us, maybe to that next place of curiosity or learning or being a beginner again, or even just reaching out and asking for help or asking for insight. What part of that are we willing to commit to? Are we willing to actually put the structure necessary? Maybe are we willing to cut away or block out some things that have been getting in the way as a distraction so we can truly focus in? And it's a really sharpening moment of focus and endurance in this transit. So I really like this full moon for that reason. Whenever we do have a Saturn play, you might find that things need to take more time. Saturn is our time lord, and so he's going to teach us to be more patient, even when we feel really restless. So if you're faced with delays, or maybe you need to take that extra study session or extra afternoon to just like sit with your thoughts. Maybe it's taking the extra time to really invest into a new form of curiosity or study, or reading your contract, reading your report, whatever that looks like. Taking the time to do that and not racing through it will be important. But maybe, some of that fire is fueling you to like actually get to it and commit to those things that have been sitting on your, table waiting for your attention. Saturn's asking you to commit in and go for it. Okay, if we look at the other ruler of this lunation, the sun's ruler of Gemini, we have Gemini at the very last degrees in this moment excuse me, we have Mercury in these last degrees of Gemini at this moment. Mercury will be moving very, very quickly up to Cancer very soon. But right now, at the moment of this full moon, he's in a sextile to Chiron. Chiron over here, who's in his very last moments of Aries. He's been here for a very long time. He will return to Aries later this year, but first he's going to go into Taurus within this next month, signaling a whole new era of healing the collective wound and as well as our personal wounds around Taurus related subjects. And I think this is important because as Chiron is ending this and moving into a Venus ruled sign, we're simultaneously having Venus in the co-presence of Jupiter. Jupiter is the moon's ruler for this lunation. So we have a Venus signature kind of blossoming and growing under the surface here around how do we heal our wounds around our resources, our sustenance, our nutrition, our foundations, our what else? Like I mentioned resources, but like I think of possessions and ownership and what it means to own, what it means to give pleasure to the self, right? Why am I saying all this? Because Venus rules Taurus, and that is where Chiron is about to move into. And as he finishes up this last round in Aries, these last few moments in Aries, talking to Mercury, delivering these messages, and then we have this like just on the brink of this Venus ruled era that we're stepping into as Venus is getting closer and closer to our moon's ruler. It's like we're still very much in a Mercurial and a Aries and a independent place, but we're just on the brink of asking these deeper questions around our self-worth, around what we value, around what we want to relate to and care for and feel pleasure around. That's like just on the surface. So I'm wondering, if you yourself are kind of feeling this sextile between Mercury and Chiron, where there's a need to express, okay, what has wounded you? What has been something that has been painful, a process that you've gone through? Maybe it's been a trauma, or maybe it's an uncovering of something that you recognize, cannot continue any longer. Chiron's at the very end of his journey. He's ready to step away from all of the work he's done in Aries these last many years since like 2018. He's been traveling through Aries, really working in wounds around our individuality and our survival and our identity and self. He's stepping into that. Well, what am I worthy of? Do I matter? What do I get to possess? So as we step into this, there's this last effort of communicating all of that information in a way that can be healing, that can be collaborative. Maybe it's with the mentor we mentioned earlier with Saturn and recognizing, okay, these are my last patterns of healing I need to address so I can step into this long-term place. Maybe it's recognizing that in order to progress forward, I need to do some work to heal myself so I can feel like I can receive, the blessings of Venus. And because Venus is so close to Jupiter here, she's informing this signature of the moon at the same time, which is, what does the moon in Sagittarius want? To expand into the future and hopefully to receive that sense of belonging and love and connection with something greater than itself. And Venus is there infusing this full moon signature along with Jupiter. And Jupiter in Cancer is exalted. He's been spending the last year here. He's very, very comfortable and happy in this sign, and he's trying to expand all of our awareness around what it means to nurture ourselves as well as to protect ourselves. What are we willing to do to protect ourselves? What lengths are we going to go to? He's asking these bigger questions around that belief system of what do you need to do to protect and nurture and care for your dreams, your hopes, your ideas, your belief system. And where have maybe you been too closed off, and how can we expand that? So many things here at play, and I feel like this full moon is really signifying like what does the next step need to look like into this next chapter that you're headed into. And that could be a health chapter, that could be a home renovation or moving chapter, that could look like a spiritual journey chapter, that could look like what you need to eat tomorrow. Like, what does the summer look like for you, and how are things going to shape and shift in your own mundane life? How could that be shifting? What is the next step in that to make sure the result is that long-term, sustainable pathway that your soul is desiring, that is living within the truth of you, of what you want, what you desire, and what you're trying to create in this world. So, lots of aspects covered. Of course, there's more in this chart, and I don't have the time to get through every single thing, and I want to make sure I answer any questions out there for anyone listening. So, want to open it up to any questions within my wonderful Zoom group. Again, thank you to all who are in my Zoom room right now. I opened the Zoom room up to for free through to my Blue Hour subscribers, so that way I can give some readings with the full moon. So, if you're out on YouTube watching and you're interested, you can sign up for my free newsletter, and you get the link every month to join in on the readings after this forecast. So, big thank you to you guys. And anybody else watching on YouTube, you're welcome to send in your questions if there's anything. We are live. So, if you have a question around a certain planetary aspect or influence within this chart, there are many more things I can talk about, and I just want to open up the floor. But yeah. I'm not seeing any questions come in, but I should probably talk a bit more about this Uranus influence because it's a really, really strong one. Uranus, of course, has been, excuse me, I'm just going to take care of that. There we go. Uranus has been just shaking things up as he does. And, we had this transit occur last summer from July through November. And then back on April 25th, Uranus re-entered Gemini. So his signature is definitely very strong, although I wouldn't consider Uranus conjunct the sun in this case. But because we just had this conjunction days ago, the sun is definitely carrying over those feelings. Uranus brings a restlessness, I need this instantaneously. It's that flash, whether of surprise and shock and, like, oh my God, what's going on? Take my breath away moment. And sometimes this can look like crisis. Sometimes this can look like divine inspiration of, oh my gosh, I'm awakened, I'm alive. And so, Uranus bringing that energy into this full moon, or maybe having just brought that. Maybe you've been going through these awakenings and moments of realizations recently, or having to deal with some form of crisis recently where that's informing these decisions that we're like, okay, now I need to amass all of the facts. What's going on here in my situation? What does my reality need to look like? And how do I create that sustainable path forward? Because again, the moon is coming in to balance this energy. And while Uranus in Gemini wants to move lightning fast, process a bunch of data, the moon is also here to remind us to honor that truth within ourselves. And again, thinking really big picture. What does this actually affect? Do I need to get so buried in details right now? Or can I take the bird's eye view, step back, and appreciate the full scope of what's going on, whether in your life or in your environment, your situation happening? So, the moon in Sagittarius is really here to remind us that while this Uranian excitement and flair and energy is stimulating like crazy, and please take care of your nervous systems for this period while Uranus is in Gemini because it's highly, highly stimulating to the nervous system. The moon in Sagittarius is reminding us to take those steps back and remember that there's a deeper truth here. There's truth beyond like all of the minor facts and details, and getting out of that polarity and recognizing the oneness of what's going on. Maybe it's the truth that both can be possible, both can be happening, both polarities occur at once, and that it's possible to find some sort of balance with those two. Uranus and Gemini is here to teach us to examine the polarity and find the awakening truth of unity in the middle. And I think the moon in Sagittarius is one of those first steps to do that. Well, I'm not seeing any questions from YouTube coming in, but I just want to thank everyone once again for hanging out in my Zoom room with me. And yeah, I'm wondering if you guys have any other planets or positions you're curious about and would like me to cover, I'd love to do that. But if not, we might wrap up and head into readings, which would be fun. So, anything else I want to touch on real quick? I should just mention because we're dealing with so much mutable energy. So we're nearing the end of our time with the nodes of the moon. And the nodes of the moon, of course, are incredibly important because we're dealing with a full moon, lunation here, right? Like a full moon in Sagittarius has that Jupiter more abundance magnify and, grow and step into the possibility of, the emotions of this moon, the implications and the dream of this moon. And that can, of course, feel overwhelming, but I think there's a sense of optimism that Jupiter brings with this. And so I encourage you to step into that optimism where you can. But I wanted to highlight the nodes of the moon because, as you can see, we've moved past this sun moon in a square with fellow mutable south node in Virgo and north node in Pisces. And as they wrap up their time here, we've been going through this huge collective lesson around, first of all, the North Node in Pisces, remembering the unity of consciousness, of humanity, of seeing the similar threads within all of us, recognizing that we deserve love and compassion, recognizing that, selfless service and a faith in something that maybe we don't tangibly have in front of us, but that we can surrender to and understand like the universe is holding us and carrying us, and this is what's happening for our benefit. That has been a huge life lesson collectively now for the last like year and a half. And our South Node in Virgo really teaching us to let go of and shed those tendencies that tell us that we're not good enough, that we're not pure enough, that we're not that we're not organized enough, and like actually letting go of some of those constructs that we have rested on because it's what made sense. It was what was logical. Whatever amount of planning we've been trying to do, the universe is giving us a masterclass, and all good plans, like, kind of go to waste because life happens. Chaos and craziness and unexpected change happens. And what do we have left when those constructs that we were resting on for our security have evaporated? We have our faith. We have our connection to each other. We have unconditional love for ourselves, hopefully, and also for those that we have in our families and our lives. So this entire mutable axis and square, frankly, all of these modalities are being highly emphasized with this full moon right now. And what is mutable energy is it's flexible, and it's asking us to remain flexible, to remain mutable and adaptable, right, to the craziness of life. These signs all exist at the end of a season. So they're in that change, in that liminal space between the height of a season and the very next start to the new season. And so we're getting this masterclass universally and have been for the last year and a half. This full moon really like, I mean, I believe this is the last full moon with this axis in a mutable sign. So this is kind of that last moment to really take in the lessons of the last year and a half and the idea of being that bamboo reed in the wind, right? Not letting it break you and not being rigid and so stuck in our ways and allowing things to move and having this inner sense that things are going to work out and be okay and having a faith, reaching on to those things that exist on a deeper level that we don't need put out in front of us and telling us that we're good enough. Do we get the A on the assignment, right? Kind of doesn't matter. Like Pisces says, like, no, man, it's all love. It's also like, let's surrender all of that need for control and recognize that we can, I think about Pisces being that effortless floating on top of the ocean water and just feeling carried and held. And so, do you feel carried and held right now, or do you feel like maybe it's been challenging to accept and surrender to, the energy around us while it's been so chaotic? Like, can we kind of find our calm in the storm? I would say that that is definitely an energetic signature as part of this. And we're wrapping up these mutable lessons within this full moon. Well, I've had a few more lovely souls join me over on the Zoom room, and I'm not really seeing any questions coming in from YouTube. So I think I'm going to go ahead and close out this forecast. Thank you so much for watching. Please feel free to listen to the monthly forecast I give over on Bonfire Babble podcast, where I go over all of the transits for the month ahead. I do every zodiacal season, and I do give a preview of what I'm going to talk about the full moon. But of course, if you would like to join me for a full moon reading, sign up for my free newsletter, Blue Hour, over on my website. And then you can be a part of the Zoom room readings for the full moon forecast every month here at CawnawynMor.com. So thank you so much to everyone watching on YouTube. And I will see you next month for the full moon in Capricorn. Blessed be.